Hi, I'm Jennifer Potter, Executive Director of Be Well Texas. Too many people are struggling alone these days, and alcohol and drug deaths are increasing. We started Be Well Texas to offer high-quality, science-based addiction treatment and recovery services anywhere, virtually or in person. In many cases, there is no cost for treatment or medications if you don't have insurance. Really. Welcome to Be Well Texas. We're glad you're here. Visit bewelltexas.org.
What's up, guys? Welcome to what will surely be a fairly depressing episode 256 of the Alamo Audible podcast. This is your host, Jared Kalmas, joined as always by my co-host, Adrian Bermudez. And it's the bye week, and we're going to sit back and recap a very frustrating loss for the Roadrunners. They lose 20-30 against ECU in Greenville, and one of the most frustrating performances I've watched from UTSA in many years. Maybe in a certain sense, to me, it was more frustrating than like the loss to Texas State, the loss to North Texas, because this game was just there for the taking, and UTSA just refused to stretch their hands out and take control of this game. Adrian, what were your thoughts?
Just an extremely disappointing loss, an extremely disappointing state of the union for UTSA Roadrunners football. It's just a very incapable team right now, incapable of playing clean football, incapable of playing football together. The mental lapses that are occurring, it's becoming more often. It's happening all over the place on the offense. And when you talk about like how do you go from, sort of running such a tight ship, I understand we have an entirely new roster to field, but at this point we're halfway through the season and we're seeing glaring issues continue to not get corrected, maybe even worse, maybe even getting worse.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The offense just cannot function whatsoever right now. And they can't finish. I mean, you're seeing, it was like a couple of weeks ago, I was watching College Game Day and Nick Saban was talking about a big little offense. I didn't know who he was talking about, but he said, I can't stand it when we used to have a big little offense. And you can see that we're capable of making some big plays, but you can't, you have too many little mistakes and you can't maintain your down and distance. Penalties, misses, and turnovers. And those are these three things that, and the turnovers are getting worse. We weren't really having too many turnovers. Now we're having a lot of them. The penalties, UTSA is 6th in the country in overall penalties on the season right now, Jared. It is 43. So tied for 6th in the country with 43 penalties on the season. It's over 75 penalty yards per game that UTSA is giving up.
Jesus Lord.
Complete lapse, a complete mental lapse. This team is not locked in. The culture is not being upheld. The triangle of toughness is not being upheld. And I just think, the confidence is just really, really wearing down. I don't know if these guys just don't believe that they can play together right now, but they don't look like they can play together. They haven't given us, they haven't given themselves the ability to believe in that they can play together because they just haven't done it. They haven't done it quite together as well as they need to, as well as they should be able to, right, with what we have here. It's just extremely disappointing, Jared. It's extremely disappointing to see this team sort of fall apart in the second half against ECU. It was an implosion because UTSA, albeit, had their struggles in the first half, but we were winning this game by a field goal, and we were in control of it. We were in control of it. We were clearly a better team. And in the second half, there's an implosion that occurs, and the offense just cannot make it happen. There's only one single score. UTSA is outscored 20-7 in the second half by ECU. There's a single touchdown by Brandon High, a beautiful touchdown run, and it's a one-possession ball game, Jared. 4 offensive possessions in the fourth quarter, one-possession ball game. Do not get a single touchdown. Do not get a single point. Pardon me.
Adrian, there's
So
so
yeah,
many things I want to react to in your opening statement there. I'm not sure where to start. I'm not sure if we'll get to all of them or not. But I guess to start with, one of the first things you said is like, you said that, went from having such a tight ship. I don't know if I agree with that. I think like these Jeff trailer teams have always had a lot of these issues, but I think they've been able to
sure.
mask that, due to having some super talented playmakers.
I feel like they tighten up throughout the season. Okay.
They
I
do.
feel like he has
I
these
think you're
issues
right
at the
about that.
beginning. I feel like he has these issues at the beginning. I'll hear that all day, but I do
Yep.
feel like they tighten up as the
Yep.
season goes on. They haven't done
Right.
that.
And that's why I'm not completely off the boat just yet, because I'm still a big believer in trailer. There's a lot of talent on this team. I still believe that. And you got a really weak schedule like the next 3 to 4 weeks, right? So let's hit 6, man. Let's hit 6. Like the old Frank Wilson hashtag. Um, but you said that UTSA fell apart in the second half. It started that last drive of the second quarter, right? That last drive of the second quarter, UTSA comes out, and I think on ECU's last possession, they would have forced a 3 and out. They commit a penalty. It starts with a bad call because Ken Robinson picks off Jake Garcia, and it's one of those balls where it's severely underthrown. The wide receiver just stops dead in his tracks, runs into Robinson. He manages to pick it off, and they call a flag on Robinson. Literally nothing that he can do to avoid a penalty there. I absolutely hate that call. It's one of the worst calls in football, but it went against UTSA. So that wiped out what should have been a turnover with UTSA in positive field position to go get another score before the half, right? Is how that should have gone down. But it didn't. And you have to be a resilient football team, and you have to fight through that. UTSA did the opposite. They committed, I think, 3 more penalties on that drive. And they just gifted East Carolina 7 points. It was just super, super egregious. There's a face mask from Jamori Robinson, which drove me nuts. Actually, it might not have been Jamori. I could be wrong about that. But it just drove me nuts because like UTSA's had that exact same penalty 2 other times this season where a defender is coming in on a blitz or just a pass rush, and they're running with their hands like outstretched like this. And then they go and grab a face mask because they're not positioned to actually get the sack and make the tackle. So just kind of like wildly flailing their arms. And like with the rules these days in college football, if you touch the quarterback in the head at all, if you just give him a love tap on the side of the helmet, you're going to get a flag on that. So, and then there was another pass interference in the end zone as well. And like, I guess that could have been an uncatchable ball, but at the end of the day, like their cornerback had his arm wrapped around a receiver. Like,
yeah, it was both can be true, right? Both can be true. And so
you're inviting the ref to make the call when you do that, like why you don't need to do that.
So the interception happens on the very first play of that drive. However, you have the pass interference penalty, PI. Okay, it's the first 10. Okay, but then get this, Jared. The face mask penalty on Jamori Robinson happens on a 3rd down, a 3rd and 10. The pass interference penalty on Denver Harris happens on a 3rd and 6. So these are 2 defensive stops that are otherwise reversed. And
get off the field, man. Get off the field.
You gotta win 3rd down. They continue the drive for ECU, and at one point it felt like every single 3rd down. And dude, the drive before that, Jared, there's another penalty on a 3rd down. I mean, so like it got egregious to the point where it felt like UTSA was just bound to have a penalty anytime that they were making a decent play. And I gotta say the end of that first half was brutal. You're absolutely right about that. There's the bad run of penalties, but at the end of the day, you're getting the ball to start the second half, right? And there is a 3-point lead. You go out at the beginning of the second half, you fail to do anything. I can't remember if we went 3 and out. I want to say we did, but on the opening possession of the second half,
I think they did.
UTSA offense doesn't do anything. And then ECU gets back-to-back touchdowns to start the second half. They go back-to-back touchdown drives. Now it's 24-13. And we're like, we're saying that we have no idea what just happened. It's like ECU just scored 3 straight times on UTSA. And there's just a drastic momentum shift, I think, in that third quarter that happened. It just kind of It took the energy out of you. I think it took the belief out of you. It took the faith out of you watching the game. It kind of felt inevitable that in that fourth quarter, whenever UTSA was one possession away, and we had 4 offensive possessions to come back and tie or potentially take the lead on a 2-point conversion, it felt like there was just no chance we were going to do that. You didn't have the belief in the team because they just hadn't put it together at that point. And what would make you think that they were going to put it together now? There were too many mistakes, way too many mistakes. So you have 12 penalties on the day. You outgain ECU by 115 total yards of offense. And you have the ball for 8.5 minutes longer on offense. Yet you still lose by 10 points, 2 possessions. So it's just a massive lack of execution, especially even down low in the red zone. There was, even to start the game, UTSA gets down there and, has to settle for field goals and drives that were after really large plays, really large, like deep passes from Owen McCown. I can't remember the specific plays right now. I have it listed out. But essentially not being able to execute and give you the exclamation point or finish a drive.
Yeah,
right?
they can't string plays together, I think, is a big problem right now. But, right. Dude, you know how hard it is to lose a game by 10 points when you outgain the opponent by 115 yards, generate 3 turnovers, 9 tackle for loss, outrun the opponent by over 3 yards per carry, and generally win in the trenches? I thought UTSA won both sides of the line of scrimmage, and they lose by 10 points. That's hard to do. That's really, you have to be trying to lose by a margin like that when you win kind of those smaller details so decisively.
Yeah.
It's hard to fathom. Yeah. It's really, really hard for me to wrap my head around it.
It's brutal. It's really, really brutal. Jared, I guess we kind of got to go through phase by phase here.
Sure.
Right. We have to start at the top. We have to start with the leadership. It's the only way that we can start. It's Owen McCown. And he had his roughest day as a Roadrunner yet, maybe. He definitely had his roughest outing.
I think so. I think this was worse than the Texas State game, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Because he didn't make as egregious of mistakes against Texas State as he did against ECU.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And he had some that were just horrendous. But look, 24 for 49, definitely his lowest completion rating. 251 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. These interceptions and these sacks that he took are extremely bad. He's way out of the pocket, rolling out, has bought plenty of extra time. I mean, these aren't sacks that happen in a blink of an eye, right? They're not bull rushes by any means. They sort of just progress as the offensive line falls apart and the play falls apart. Mm. So Owen's got all these seconds to stand there and make the right decision, but he's just not doing. He's sort of freezing there, giving you're deer in the headlights. And instead of throwing the ball away or getting it out of bounds or just checking it or whatever it is, making the smart decision, he keeps trying to extend it to the point where he's getting pulled down by his legs, getting pulled down by his jersey. He's getting pulled down. And he'll try to throw the ball right before his knee touches the ground. It'll be an interception. One was almost a fumble. The other one did end up being a sack. He didn't get out in time. But he's got all his time to throw it out of bounds and just go to the next down, right? But he hasn't quite snapped to catch that yet. He's still sort of freezing. He's a very young quarterback, and I think his youth was on full display Saturday.
I thought that this was the first time we've seen Owen McCown try to play like hero ball. You know what I mean?
Yes, that's exactly what it was.
He's not letting the offense come to him. He's not taking what the defense is giving him, but forcing the ball into spots, trying to make big plays, trying to keep the play alive for way too long, right? He's been so good at that at UTSA. That's been one of his primary achievements as a Roadrunner, is he's avoided that. And I don't know what changed to make him feel like he needed to do all that kind of stuff against ECU, because it was not necessary in this game. They were never down by more than 2 scores, I don't think, right? In fact, a lot of these kind of questionable plays came when UTSA had a lead or was within 1 score. And then on some plays, it wasn't even like a third down situation, right? So, it was really strange. It's strange that he was getting pulled down by his jersey and had like turnover worthy plays twice. Because the first one, he
Oh,
was getting pulled down by his jersey, and then he would try to throw on the run, thread the needle, super difficult pass, like no way. And then I think it was only like 2 drives later, he was getting pulled down by the jersey again and tried to like flick the ball out of bounds. And thankfully they called it intentional grounding. But I mean, that could have easily been a fumble. In fact, I would say like 7 times out of 10, that's going to get called a fumble. So for him to kind of repeat that same mistake twice was super
oh yeah.
disheartening. But it was a good ECU defense too. I do want to give them some credit. I think they did a lot of good things that confused Owen. There was a 4th down play in the red zone where UTSA ran levels, so you'll have 3 trips receivers on one side, and all 3 of them are kind of different distances from each other. You'll have one guy that runs like a 2-yard route, like an 8-yard route, and like a 12-yard route. The concept being like if it's zone coverage, they can't cover all of that space, right? And someone's going to be open. Great play call. ECU was in zone, but they faked a blitz. They had their linebackers up on the line of scrimmage, and they backed off. Owen threw the ball so quick off the snap that those receivers or those linebackers dropped back into coverage, and they're right there. Could have intercepted it. I think they tipped it. Excuse me. But just another case where like Owen needs to sit there and read the play, right? He needs to trust the offensive line will hold up, because they were holding up for the most part. His number of sacks was kind of misindication of like how decent the offensive line was, right?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think so. Like I said, a lot of
there's
those
a
were
lot
just
of
sort of like
examples.
broken plays.
Right. You use the word broken. I saw a lot of people say that this offense is broken. I'm inclined to agree. Like they don't look well versed. They don't look like they have chemistry. Some of the plays that I saw in my rewatch, it looked like they were running that play for the first time ever. Like they ran this like alert screen twice, and both times it's like guys didn't know who to block, they didn't know where to line up, they didn't know where to run. Owen didn't know when to throw it. It all felt very off and very weird, very sluggish, and like that's a very simple play. It's like it all feels off. It all feels weird. And in a lot
It
of
feels
cases,
very
it's
weird.
obviously you have a sophomore quarterback, but you've got a super senior tight end blocking for a senior receiver or
That's
a
right.
guy that was been a starter for a long time. It's like, what's going on here? Like these guys should know how to execute this play. It's nothing crazy.
Well, look at how much help he got, not just from his offensive line, from his backfield too. 170 yards from UTSA running backs on the day. And for the very first time, sure enough, the very first conference game, Jeff Traylor tightens up the running back rotation, whereas we've seen 6 to 8 to 9 running backs. I think even is getting a carry each game. We only saw 3. There's Kavorian Barnes, Robert Henry, and Brandon High. Those are the
I
only
didn't
3
realize that
running backs
Rocco
that
didn't
touched
get
the
a
ball.
touch. Yeah.
Did not get a touch. And it was a very, very tight run game. These guys were efficient. They were good. And
Mm-hmm.
I really loved what I saw from that trio right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Owen McCown, no reason to play that hero ball and to force it. And then whenever he had receivers that were open, he either threw the ball too high and missed them. That happened several times.
A lot.
Or UTSA wide receivers dropped the ball, Jared. Dare I say, man, we've come a long way from the University of Hands at San Antonio with how many drops we've had. I am shocked. I cannot believe what's happening here. These are crucial plays these drops are occurring on. And guys that have been making big plays too. Willie McCoy. Man, what's going on, Jared?
I don't think he's ever had good hands. I mean, he didn't put up crazy stats at the JUCO level. Most of his highlights were kick returns. So that's why I was always a little bit skeptical that he would be like the top target for UTSA. I thought like DJ Allen would pass him up. So I don't know. Maybe some evaluation misses, but these guys are like you see the flashes. Like McCoy had like, what was that, 50-yard completion from Owen. Beautiful ball.
66. It was a 66 yarder. 66, huge.
So it's hard to take him off the field, but when you put your trust in that player in crunch time and they run a rub route on a quick slant specifically designed to get you the ball on 4th down, and the ball hits you in the face and drops to the turf for a turnover on downs, you can't trust that player, right? So it's so tough, man. I don't know.
You can't.
I don't know.
You can't.
I have a lot of concerns with the wide receiver room. at this point. But it's not always the same problem every game, right? Like there are some games where guys aren't getting open. They were getting open against ECU. There was one play that UTSA ran verticals. I think like 2 of the 3 receivers were going to be wide open for potential touchdowns. Owen didn't find them. He forced the ball to the tight end, and that was one of his interceptions. But then, sometimes they were open, and Owen makes a pass, and it's a drop. I think it was the first. It was either the first or second scoring drive for UTSA. They got down to the red zone, and Owen threw 3 passes that were either slight misfires or just outright drops. And that has never happened under Jeff Traylor's, leadership at UTSA before. It was just so brutal to watch. And like, how can you really get into a flow of an offense when you're constantly dealing with missed passes, with drops, with penalties? It's all these small things that add up, right? Like, Pro Football Focus only had 3 drops for UTSA against ECU. Owen probably had 5 passes that were like to open receivers, but he misfired on. But that's 8 plays right there. And you add that up over the span of a game, and that's potentially 8 drive killers. It's really rough, man.
Absolutely. Absolutely was. It absolutely was. It certainly felt like that. Owen missed a lot of guys. He made a lot of bad decisions. He didn't get too much help from his receivers whenever he did hit them. And it was overall, all around, right? Just really ugly, really sloppy. I mean, again, I think clean football. You're not seeing UTSA able to execute play after play. You say, Jared, string along plays.
Mm-hmm.
Have a full production of a drive from start to finish and get in the end zone. It's just not happening. And the one-offs do happen. You see that, and that's how UTSA is able to outgain ECU by 100 yards, but it's not in a functional way. It's not in a functional way at all. Owen McCown, I think, very, very young, has to learn a lot and really just get used to being in those situations and making the right decision. I'm confident in his ability to do so, but a guy needs a season to figure out how to be a starting quarterback. I can't blame him for that. But I do say I'm very surprised at he seemed to be a little deer in the headlights, frozen. He kind of froze up when the going got tough, right? And I need Owen to be that dog that they say he is and really get out there and let it rip on him.
He took some big licks. He took some really, really big licks against ECU. And, he's gotten hit in other games and he's bounced back and he's responded well to it. But, I wonder if he just got
flying
rattled
all over the place. His helmet was flying
let's talk
off.
about the freaking helmet, Adrian.
Owen McCown's helmet, he did take some big hits, Jared, and his helmet was flying all over the place. He was getting leveled. There's some still photos that I saw of Owen really getting crushed. And yeah, he got really beat up. He did.
Dude, shout out to the American having great ESPN Plus streaming broadcast, because there were some shots of Owen on the sideline and you could see like clear like indications on his forehead where his helmet was too loose and it was causing his face to get smacked around because his helmet was flying around everywhere. And you can tell in the broadcast that his chin straps were not tightened all the way. And that's kind of where we're at with this program as far as attention to details goes, is your starting quarterback is out there with an untightened chin strap, and no one fixes that throughout the whole game. His helmet comes off like 4 or 5 times, and no one fixes it. No one says it.
No one is aware.
And that's something that like, the whole program has to own, right? Equipment managers, offensive linemen, coaches, players, someone has to see that and do something about it. And you would think that would happen before the game. Then you think, okay, well, maybe it would happen the first time his helmet came off. And then you think, well, surely they would fix that at halftime. Never got fixed.
Second, the third, never got fixed.
What?
Never got fixed. So at one point,
it's a safety issue. It's a safety concern.
At one point, Eddie Marburger had to enter the game because Owen's helmet came off.
Twice. One of them was a crucial third down. Eddie had the one time he came in, he threw that screen pass to
Kavorian.
Oh, Kavorian. Yeah.
35
huge gain,
yards.
set him up for the score. Yeah, but then the next time it was like 3rd and 9, and Eddie comes in, and I don't think anyone was open. I can't remember what the play was, but so concerning, dude.
And they just he just went to the sideline, put his helmet back on, and like no one tightened it for him while Eddie Lee was taking a couple of snaps. It's
I'm kind of
nuts.
surprised a referee didn't stop play and have him tighten the chin strap, man.
Right, yeah, at that point, someone's got to come in there and do something. So,
Crazy. Absolutely
so
crazy.
Jared, it's rough. It's a rough day for UTSA's offense. I don't think that people can or should say the same about UTSA's defense. I don't think they had a rough day at all. I think UTSA's defense had a fantastic day. They gave UTSA's offense every single chance to win this game, to come back and send this game to overtime at least, put themselves in position to win it. And they couldn't do so. But UTSA's defense, I think, played a great game against
They
ECU. What
almost
do you
won
think?
it themselves, honestly, dude. Like,
Yeah.
Zay
Yeah.
Frazier with the 2 interceptions. One of them, potential pick six. The second one, he caught it on an out route on the corner, right? Like, that's an easy one to return for 6. And
Yeah.
then there was, I think the next drive, Garcia had a pass that like almost went sideways. It was almost backwards. And I think like Daydream was on that one. Like that one was pretty close to being a fumble return for a touchdown as well. So they had a lot of opportunities there, and it's tough. I mean, considering the opponent, this might have been the best defensive performance of the year for
Yeah.
UTSA. I mean, the
47
front
yards
seven,
rushing.
yeah, the front seven was stifling. They did not get pushed around at all. Brandon
Yeah.
Brown had a huge game. Joe Evans had a big game. Jamal Ligon, Martavius French were all excellent. They
Yes.
plugged those holes very, very well. There were some miscommunications and some trips and stuff from the secondary. Ugh, man, just a
You
wasted performance. It's brutal.
you hold them to 47 yards rushing total. Only 341 yards on the day, right? And and nowadays I don't think that's a lot of offensive output. It's not a whole lot of yardage. And then they even held them for 5 for 16 on their third downs. UTSA's defense was stellar, was absolutely stellar. Just didn't get any help whenever they needed it in the second half. Was not able to
They,
get the help that they needed.
they generated 9 tackles for loss. Everyone played great. This whole defense played great, top to bottom. Okay, maybe Ty Milton didn't have a great game. He got burned a lot. But I'm looking at the list, and like other than him, everyone played spectacular.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a great game for UTSA's defense. And I think you're right. It's really all by committee. UTSA's defense is Zay Frazier really like making those momentum shifting plays. Just didn't get any juice back from it. Couldn't do anything with it. UTSA's defense seems to be making those steps towards improvement, those strives towards improvement. Tackling, I think, still guys are slipping away a little bit, but
Mm-hmm.
overall, I think that defense is getting tighter and they're getting better and they're playing better. And we finally saw a big turnover day. Yeah, they're all over the place, man. They're all over the place.
Yeah, they could have had a lot more turnovers too. Zay got his hand on 2 balls that he didn't
Close.
come out down with. I mean, he not far off from having a 4 interception day, which I'm sure would have been a school record.
There was Kins that was negated, right, by penalty. There was a couple loose balls on the ground that we just didn't fall on top of.
Some muff punts that we didn't catch.
Dude, it was a wild day. Yeah, it was a wild day. But again, UTSA with every single chance to come back and take this game just can't get it done, dude. And it's really due to mental lapses, mistakes, and horrendous performance whenever you need it the most. Third downs, scoring situations, etc. Wasn't there at all. Just the execution is not there at all.
Mm-mm.
This thing has really gotten off the rails. And my biggest concern, Jared, is that this team's confidence is shot because they have no momentum, because they haven't been able to play well together against a team that is good, an opponent that is good. They haven't been able to do it. I think their confidence is shot. It's really hard for them to believe in themselves, to win together, to play together. And you're seeing these mental lapses occur way too frequently. Bye week couldn't come at a better time. Bye week could not come at a better time. UTSA has no business playing football, especially not a conference game on Saturday.
This team has not been resilient. They've not been mentally tough. They have not responded to adversity once this season. You guys have, there is one silver lining. JT Clark is back. He didn't have any catches against ECU, but he was drawing that defense's attention. I can tell you that much. They were bracketing him as soon as he stepped on the field. hopefully his return sparks some confidence in UTSA. It brings some leadership. Hopefully. That's all I got, dude.
Well, Jared, you said something that was really interesting, and this is something that I think we got to talk about, got to address. This is by far the lowest point of Jeff Traylor's tenure here at UTSA, record-wise, performance-wise, right? Not getting the output, points-wise, offensively, not getting it on the record, on the win column. So now here he is, a game under 500, 2-3, 0-1 in conference. The tight culture of mental toughness is not being upheld. The culture is completely crumbled at this point. And you said something that was interesting on our recap, on our reaction, on our next day reaction, our immediate reaction. Remember, you can subscribe, guys, for just $5 a month and unlock those. You said that there's been a huge change at leadership, that player leadership in the way of offensive captains and Frank Harris and company there on his wide receivers, Rashad Wisdom on defense. And without that player leadership, Jeff Traylor hasn't quite adjusted his coaching style to make up for that. I'm really, really interested on that take.
Yeah. Doesn't it seem like to you like Jeff's been like pretty passive on the sidelines? Like
It's
anytime
so
the camera's
strange.
on him,
He's passive in his press conferences too. I like
Yeah.
post games and after the
mopey,
games, like
I would
he's
say.
shell-shocked, mopey. It's very, very strange. Because from him, I expect so much different emotion. I expect him to be pretty fiery after like large disappointments. And it's just not what I expect at all, demeanor-wise.
I think a lot of that is him just being shocked. I think he really thought this team was going to be a lot better. And I think he's still searching for answers himself, right? I think the team that he probably saw in the spring and in fall camp was better than what he's seen so far this year, right? So I think he probably maybe is a little confused. But at this point in the season, I mean, I think it's clear that change needs to happen, right, for this team to get anywhere close to their potential. Obviously, certain team goals are well out the window now. And I feel like the way that Jeff probably coached this team the last couple of years, when he had the players that, you know, knew the expectations and would uphold their teammates to it, aren't here anymore. I don't think people have stepped up into that role for UTSA. Definitely not on the opposite side of the ball. And at this point, I mean, you're this late in the season. I don't know if anyone will, right? So if the players are going to step up and bring that player-led leadership that you would love to see, the coaching staff has to be the one to do it, right? And if you got to do, you know, some tough love to get there and get a little more bold, brash, aggressive, you know, whatever, you know, the adjective may be, then that's what you have to do, right? This team wants to win. These guys want to compete. They want to play good football, right? So it'll be interesting to see. I feel like over the bye week, you know, that's a good time to do that kind of cultural reset.
So soul searching is needed right now.
Yeah.
Soul searching is needed right now. These guys got to have those team meetings, those players-only meetings. They got to close the doors of that gymnasium. Just get after one another, have those conversations, have that talk, and figure out how they're going to how to rewrite this shit.
Figure out how to figure it out, right?
Figure it out how to figure it out is exactly what I was going to say, Jared. And but that's what has to happen. I think at this point, it's time for those players only meetings. Team has to have those deep conversations and start to figure things out, dude. We'll see if it's able to get done, Jared. 2 weeks. 2 weeks to do that.
It's tough on the offensive side because I don't think there's a single guy that's played enough and played well enough that he would command the respect of. So, like if Jamal Ligon, Jamoy Robinson, Ken Robinson were to do that on the defensive side, like people would listen because these guys have been here. They've produced at a high level, and they've produced at a high level this year.
You need JT Clark to get out there and light some fires. Can JT Clark light some fires?
Yeah, I think him being back on the field in practice, you know, probably changes things. If he's out there mossing on dudes in practice and catching touchdowns and stuff,
start yelling at dudes, Michael Irvin style, just ripping dudes to pieces.
Dude, someone has got to bring some style, some charisma, some confidence to this offense, man. They got to get the swag back. They need the swagger.
There's no swagger. There's no
Zero swag.
swagger right now at all. Zero swag. Someone
This
has
offense
to
is
bring.
is a cold mayonnaise and ham sandwich right now.
Where's the steez? Where's the drip? Where's the French dip? You know what I mean? I want one of those, Jared, with the good roast beef on it. And, it's strange because this team has always been player led. That's the culture. That's what the locker room knows. That's what has always sort of been the way underneath Jeff Traylor. You can't really expect him to change the coaching style halfway through a season.
It's hard, yeah.
Though it feels like he's got to buckle down to some degree. But you're right in that locker room, someone's got to step up and be that dude or a group of guys, whatever it takes. They've got 2 weeks to figure this thing out. But right now, it is looking like the Roadrunners have to crawl, scratch. What is it? Crawl, scratch, and fight, whatever their way to a 500 record for bowl eligibility for 6-6. We're definitely not trending to do any better than that. And even right now, that's looking like it's going to be a stretch for this team to accomplish. Mm-hmm. Thankfully, we've got a schedule and a conference that there's a lot of parity, but we're mid-tier, potentially bottom tier at the rate that we're going right now. Far cry, and the mighty have fallen right now. When you look at this UTSA Roadrunners team, that's what it is. These guys got to get their swagger back. They're able to do it. And I'm with you, Jared. I do believe in Jeff Traylor and trusted him to be able to turn this thing around. And I do still think the talent is in this room to perform at a high level in this conference, man.
Dang. You still see it on those individual plays, like William McCoy has that long catch. Owen threw a couple dimes. Robert Henry, Kavorian, Brandon High all had great runs. You saw some big blocks, even from the reserve offensive linemen. I mean, hell, in that fourth quarter, you had pretty much the entire second-string offensive line out there for several series, and they held up fine, right? They made some holes. They didn't have any, glaring issues in pass protection. There are certain guys that aren't producing. I mean, the tight end position has been really, really rough, but you still see Oscar get a touchdown catch. Really nice grab, man. He went up and got it. He was off balance, not a perfect throw from Owen. But you got to find a way to put it all together. Guys have to be inspired to play their best football, and that's not something that you can just kind of scheme up. You know what I'm saying? The guys have to find it within them.
I take it straight out of Jeff Traylor's vocabulary with boneheaded mistakes, boneheaded football. So they got to clean that stuff up, man.
Yeah.
Well,
Last note for me, injury issue is getting concerning as well.
Okay.
Like I said, a lot of that second string offensive line was out there in that fourth quarter. Corey Godenet went down with an injury. Hart continues to be banged up. I heard CJ James got hurt. Brandon High got hurt on his touchdown run. I don't know the severity of all those, and of course it's the bye week, so they'll have some time to rest up. But it's been rough sledding for UTSA from injury perspective once again. Every program goes through it, but just continue. I mean, UTSA is not in a position where they can afford to lose a lot of these guys, but they are getting JT Clark back. He's back this past week. Hopefully David Amador is not far behind him. Hopefully that brings some spark to the offense. But it's bleak, Adrian. It's bleak.
Godspeed these Roadrunners over this bye week to turn this thing around.
Yep. Well, on our Patreon bonus episode this week, we're going to try something new. We had a lot of people reach out to say that they had some frustrations that they needed to get out. So we delivered something that the people have been asking for quite a while, and we finally have the ability to have voicemails on the podcast. So this is your opportunity to have your voice heard on our bonus episode this week. You guys can call in to 210-660-8259. That is the Alamo Audible hotline. Once again, that is 210-660-8259. Theoretically, you could pause the podcast right now, dial those numbers, and get a hot take off your chest right now.
Oh my gosh.
Now, I'm not going to sit here and promise we're going to play every single one of them on the bonus episode. We may pick and choose some highlights and some lowlights per se. But at least that avenue is open for you. And we do retain editorial decision-making on that.
Calls will be screened,
it's behind the paywall. It'll be on Patreon only. So
we are able to get away with more things. Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it may feel good.
How exciting.
I did a test voicemail and I said some takes, and I'm definitely not ready to actually fire off just yet. But it felt good to verbalize them, and hopefully it'll be the same for you guys.
Wow, Jared. Oof, fiery stuff. I'm very, very excited about this. I know the audience is. Long time coming, folks. Technology just continues to get better here. So, shout
Yeah.
out to our chief
Yep.
director of technology, Mr. Jared Callis.
Man in many hats. But the real shout out should go to our Patreon subscribers that give us the financial backing to make these kind of things happen. So that includes our board of trustees members, Digiteek, John Otwell, Gary and Ruben representing the UTSA Burger King Tailgate, Ray Redding and Meet Me Apparel, Brandon Grill and the Grill Realty Group, Andy Elizada and Proficient Benefit Solutions, Ian McClendon and Secret LLC, Ryan Squares, Waterman Construction, UTSA Annual Giving, Artisan Vapor and CBD, and Wayne Gonzalez and the Runners Rising Project. So we're going to take a quick cumbia break, and we're going to come back and do some position grades since we're more or less at the halfway point of the season for the Roadrunners. It's a good time to have some honest assessments of where this team stands at this point in the season. So we'll do that right after the break. Thank you, guys. All right, guys, welcome back from your cumbia break. Adrian and I are going to break down the position units for UTSA, give a letter grade for each. Might get a little scary. Let's see how it goes. Shall we start with quarterback? New starting quarterback, Owen McCown.
It's only right. It's only right that we start with Owen, man, and it's difficult. Look, Owen, I think, played decent football through the first 4 games of this season. I don't really think there was anything you could fuss about. Right now, standing on the season, he's 7 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He's got a 61.5 completion percentage, over 1,000 yards thrown so far. He's been doing well. He hasn't been stellar, superhero, fantastic. But through the first 4 games of the season, he's been doing well. I had no qualms with anything. Then you had the performance against ECU, which was bad. It was bad. It's bad. So if I was going to give him a B through the first 4 games of the season and then a D for ECU, which I think I would probably give him a D for ECU, yeah, probably B minus, C plus. I don't know, somewhere right there, somewhere right in that range, that 78 to 83 type of 77 to 83, 78 to 83 sort of range. I think.
Yeah, he needs the extra credit to round up.
Yeah, for sure, something around there. But the ECU is egregious, and it brings his average down tremendously. So, yeah.
Okay. I'm going to go with a B minus because I do feel pretty strongly that if the rest of the offense was doing their job, that Owen would look a lot better. There are a lot of dropped passes against ECU that have caught, probably win that game for UTSA, get them to overtime. And, the story could be that Owen was the hero on the road and came back and won, right? So I think B minus is pretty fair, but I wouldn't argue against a C plus either. Tough spot for him, being a young guy with a lot of unproven pieces around him. Still feel pretty good about him long term for sure, but I'm in agreement with you on that. Speaking of drop passes, I don't know what to rate the receivers, dude. You can't rate them high. They're definitely not an A.
No, far from it, I think, Jared, because this group has not done anything stellar. They've made a lot of mistakes. And I don't know, Jared, did you want to grade the tight ends individually? Or are they playing in the receiver grade?
Let's do them separately. We play so many tight ends, you have to grade them separately.
Okay. So, receiver-wise, you've really only had 2 guys catch the majority of the balls. It's Willie McCoy and Devin McEwen. Neither have been super stellar. Both have made good plays. Both have made very good plays. Both have made their mistakes too. There hasn't really been anyone blowing up behind them. I don't think it's too far off from Owen, but I think it's probably a little bit worse. I think they're probably a solid C on the season.
I feel the same way. And another thing I'll add to what you said, I think the blocking's been pretty underwhelming too. I feel like a lot of plays that UTSA should have gotten decent yardage on. They only got 2 or 3 yards instead of 7 or 6 because the receivers weren't blocking the way that you would expect them to block. So
Yeah.
C feels right to me. It's really hard. I haven't been to a lot of games in person this year, just 2 of the 5. So it's hard to tell from the TV broadcast if guys are getting open downfield and the quarterback's missing them or not. But I don't think it's happening frequently enough that I'm going to give them extra credit above a C.
Sure. Yeah.
You mentioned the tight ends, man. The tight end position is probably the lowest one for me. I'm going to go ahead and lead with a D minus. Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong.
Can't be done. Can't be done. A lot of mistakes all over the place. Catching the ball, blocking, all around. It's been an unreliable unit so far, the tight end. And like you said, Jared, we play so many of them. We've had big expectations for him. Gosh, you were talking about playing the young guys more, Jared. I mean, that's what we got to start doing.
Overmeyer's been the
wide
bright
receiver-
spot here. Overmeyer's not been a world beater, but
That's
for
what I'm
a
saying.
young guy, you see the promise.
Overmeyer's been the bright spot. We need to be playing those young guys, like you were saying on the immediate reaction, Jared. I think Overmeyer's been the bright spot here. He's probably had the most well average, and he hasn't seen nearly as many snaps as everybody else, but he's been effective whenever he's in. But I don't know what's going on. Go ahead.
I'm going to read you the overall PFF grade for the 4 tight ends on the depth chart. You ready for this? 55.4, 53.6, 55.7, 55.9. That's a whole lot of nothing for a whole lot of snaps. And when it's that widespread, you got to look at the coaching, right? You got a new tight end coach this year. Anything else you want to add on the tight ends? I'm
Jared,
very down on them.
I would probably agree with you on the D. Or you said D minus.
Yeah, is that too
harsh?
I
would say D for sure. No, I don't think it's too harsh. To me, it really looks like the tight ends have just been getting pushed around more so than any other position.
They straight up miss a lot of blocks. Just ole. Defender runs right around them.
Outmatched completely, right? Outmatched size-wise, outmatched agility-wise. Yeah, it's ugly. It's really ugly right now.
And I grade this unit more harshly because the roster was composed for the tight ends to be such a huge part of the offense. You know what I mean? They're built to run 12 personnel. They run a lot of 12 personnel. So when you're building your team and your offense around that kind of ancillary position that you're going to use a lot more than other schools use, and you get almost zero production out of them, I'm going to grade that a lot more harshly than I would for a typical offense that would only have one tight end on the field most of the time.
So that leaves us on the offense with running back and offensive line. I'm curious, do we have one bright spot here, 2 bright spots here, no bright spots here? Where's your temperature?
That's a good question. Let's go with the running backs first, I guess. It's been such a weird year for the running backs because so many of them have played. And we have said on almost every episode this season that it's hard for these running backs to really get into a groove when they're constantly being taken off the field and sometimes not seeing snaps for a whole quarter at a time. But the talent has flashed. These guys have made those big, flashy, long runs. Brandon High is looking great. What's he running for 9 yards a carry or something like that? 7.3?
7 and a quarter, yeah.
Robert Henry's been great. I think Kavorian's been up and down a little bit, but I would still say overall, just for a standard running back, he's had a decent year.
Up and down a little bit, yeah.
Probably not to our expectations because we know what he's capable of, but he's still been solid. Bryson Donnell played a lot in one game. He flashed, so...
Yep.
Running backs, I'm feeling a B minus.
So over 3.5 yards per carry through 5 games so far, right? They've had a large staff of them. A couple of guys have put the ball on the turf already.
True.
So that's never good. But I think as a unit entirely, the running backs have been good. They've been dependable. They've played better as the offensive line has played better too. I think there's an inverse relationship, obviously. But especially I think whenever we're looking at the grades of the offensive line and the running backs, they started the season, I think, a lot lower. But I think those 2 have probably shown maybe the most improvement over the 5 games that UTSA has played so far. So we're definitely seeing a parallel there. And of course, they go hand in hand. but I would probably gravitate more towards a B with how
Yeah.
based off how that room is shaping out. I think B, not quite B plus yet, because we just haven't seen too much stuff. I mean, we've seen a couple of big runs, but gosh, also I think the rotating cast of having 7 different guys run the ball over 3 different games so far, at least 3 games so far. That's I think hurt. I think the overall effectiveness of the running back room and the grade.
Yeah. One thing I'll add to support your grade of a B over my B minus is they've made an impact in the passing game as well. We've seen some of these receivers be very active on the screen plays and get big gains. I think the blitz pickup for the running backs has really improved week over week. In fact, against ECU, I saw the running backs throw some pretty big hits against some blitzing Pirates. So I'm gonna go with your grade of a B and round mine up from the B minus. So we already said a bit about the offensive line. You know, they've improved right alongside the running backs. You know, it's a symbiotic relationship, obviously. A lot of growth from a lot of guys, right? Like we were riding CJ James's ass on this podcast and my film breakdowns. I was tearing him up, man. He was sucking, dude. He was sucking. And now he's been one of the best players on the offense these past 2 or 3 weeks, right? So that turnaround has been fantastic. His snaps have been good. I think Kamar Missouri, the Rutgers transfer, has been really, really, really nice at left tackle. PFF grades him kind of low. They have him at a 56. That feels way off to me. I think he's been really solid for UTSA. He's gotten beat, sometimes in pass protection for sure, but I think he's been a really, really good addition for them out of the transfer portal. When Mekhi Hart has been healthy, he's played well. Another thing I'll say too is I think some of the second string guys that have seen a lot of minutes due to injury have also been good contributors, right? Walker Beatty has played well when he's been in. He's not been perfect, obviously, but given the situation, I've been really happy with his play. And then we saw DeAndre Marshall move from tackle to guard, and he's playing a lot better. He looks a lot more natural there. So I think if all these guys can get healthy, Vinley Tatafu's been dealing with injury, Corey Godinet's been dealing with injury. I think the offensive line is in decent shape. They're coming around.
Yeah.
B.
Yeah, I think so. I think if you take into consideration the improvement, it's been tenfold on this offensive line. They really have been a steady, consistent unit. You have to at least give them a B, if not a B plus.
I would say they had A grades against Texas and Houston Christian, and to get an A grade against Texas is crazy.
Yeah, I'd say that they've been the bright spot. They were better than the running backs room. So B plus, I think for me, probably offensive line.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair. I could also see where someone would listen to that and be like, y'all are crazy. They're a C minus all the way. I think that'd be fair. But I think like the pass protection has been better than it looks on TV. If you go back and you watch it, like some of those plays that, Owen throws the ball away or he misfires or a receiver drops it or whatever, like if Owen would have sat back there and like really let the play develop, he had time to do so. And like, if he extends that play and throws it deep and there's a big touchdown, everyone gives the offensive line a lot of credit. But since like the offense isn't clicking like that, I don't think they're getting the credit that they deserve. So
100%. Yeah. 100%. I think if you took a really, really zoomed out look, maybe you could probably fall into a C. But if you look at it game by game and how this offensive line has improved and how they're playing now, I think you got to give them a lot more credit.
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay. No, but but Jared, no A's on the offense. I think that's for sure.
Yeah,
nowhere on
that's
the
totally
offense.
Fair. Do we want to give an overall grade for the offense?
What would yours be?
I think mine would be a C.
I think that's fair. This is an offense that's not been able to put together impressive drives on a steady enough basis. They're scoring 22 points per game, for crying out loud. Yeah, they're C at best, I think.
Yeah, and some of the defenses that they have struggled to move the ball against are obviously susceptible to doing that, as we've seen this season go on. Kennesaw just lost to UT Martin. Texas State just lost to Sam Houston State. So some of those performances look a lot worse in hindsight than they did
this offense is under 80% in the red zone. This offense is 34% on third down conversions. Hardly a third of their third downs have they converted. So yeah, you'd be crazy to give them anything better than a C.
Yeah. Well, let's jump over to defense. Let's start with, I guess, up front with the defensive line. And keep in mind, we're just talking to 3 down defensive linemen here, not the edge outside linebackers.
I think the defensive line up front, they played pretty well. I think they've held steady.
Yeah.
They haven't had any glaring issues or errors, any really big mistakes. Maybe, you want to see a little bit more havoc being caused, but I don't think they've been bad in that department either. So efficient, probably a B plus from the front 3. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking B plus as well. It's been great to see Chad Otutu play a lot as a true freshman and play really well.
I like Otutu a lot. Yeah,
Jerry
he's
Buxton.
been really, really good.
Yeah, and then we see this John Jones guy come out of nowhere as well. He had some plays against East Carolina as well. I don't know if he actually got any tackles for loss in the game, but he was disruptive and he was in the backfield. So I think a B plus, and I think a pretty good chance to get it to an A minus. As they see some weaker competition these next few games. Well, let's go to the linebackers. Do you want to grade like interior linebackers and outside linebackers together? Or do you want to split those?
I think we just do the linebackers as a group.
Cool. If we're doing the linebackers as a group, I think it's been really solid. I mean, I think the one thing that I don't know if I would say is glaring, but the one thing that sticks out is we really haven't seen that secondary pass rush specialist develop behind Jamori Robinson just yet. And I don't think that's a huge surprise. I think it was always a bit of a stretch to think, Vic Shaw or James Wally were at the point where they would come in and be like a 5 sack a season kind of guy. They will hopefully develop into that and maybe more. But man, outside of that, this unit's been great, right? Jamal Ligon, Brevin Randall, Martavis French have been incredible at inside linebacker. I've been super happy with their play there. And then, Dadrian and Owen, Pee-wee, they just do their thing, man. Just dynamic athletes. And, it's just so cool to see Dadrian come back for that Texas game and just immediately you see his fingerprints all over the defense. He just brings like a certain element that the other guys don't bring. But, we've seen even Marcellus Wilkerson, Bryce Grays. Make big plays, that money backer position, dude. So I think I might go with an A for the linebackers.
I was going to say, if anyone on this team, if there's one position group that deserves an A, it's the linebackers.
That's fair.
They should get it all day. This unit has been consistent and good week in and week out. They've had the fewest mistakes, I think, anywhere on the defense. They've probably been the most together unit as well. And yeah, you named so many names, Jared. Like the whole rotating cast of linebackers of both inside and outside, they've all been good. There's really not like a weak link in that linebacker room. I think they get an A all day.
Yeah, we didn't mention Jamori Robinson by name, but he's had a great year as well.
Yeah.
His sack number is probably not okay, yeah, but his sack number is probably not going to end up matching Trey Moore, obviously, but I think what he's brought from a pressure generating standpoint has been fantastic. I mean, it's all you can ask for UTSA. They're making quarterbacks release the ball soon. They're making quarterbacks leave the pocket, step up into the pocket. So they've done the job from the pass rush perspective.
Jamori Robinson, 3 sacks, 6.5 tackles for loss. He's had a pass broken up. He's had a forced fumble now. He's been all over the place. He's just been all over the place. Giving you that exact output that he told us that he was going to give us right here on this podcast on Alamo Audible just a couple of months ago.
Yep. Leads the team with 10 pressures and 6 quarterback hurries as well. Well, let's split up the cornerbacks and the safeties. Cornerback's been interesting. A lot of guys have played here. You've seen a different starting combination most games.
Quarterbacks have been good, but they've also been making mistakes, and they're one of those units that have had those mental lapses and those those errors in judgment, and that hurts their grade a lot for me.
I don't know if I have a very strong opinion on how to grade this unit. I guess
they've had their misses too. I think they've gotten beat, but they haven't been bad. I don't think the quarterback has been. I don't think you can say they've been bad flat out. Yeah. So I go back to how I was on McCown, and it's somewhere between that B minus and that C plus for me. C at the worst for the cornerback room, but I think it's probably in that C plus B minus range.
Yeah. I guess the fact that I don't feel too strongly about it probably indicates that they're probably worthy of a B minus. Because if I did feel strongly, it'd probably be for a bad reason, and that would be a C.
Mm,
You know what I
there you go.
mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I'll go with B minus on them. We see Zay Frazier continue to develop. He's had a good year. Potential breakout game for him against ECU. So I see this unit probably getting better and generating more turnovers later in the year. But I think for now, B minus probably feels about fine. Surprisingly, Adrian, I'm really happy with the safeties, including the depth here, which is
Yeah.
it's been a sore spot for UTSA, right? Like you've had Rashad Wisdom back there for the whole Jeff Traylor era up until this year, but not a whole lot else, right? It's kind of been this rotating cast of Kelechi Nwachukwu coming in, and just you never really felt super confident in that second and third safety on the field. But that's not been the case for me this year. I've been really happy with Ken Robinson, obviously, Elliot
Mm-hmm.
Davison, Jimmy Wyrick, the Stanford transfer, I think has played really well. And then
Yes.
Elijah Newell, the true freshman. I mean, he's gotten beat, but he hasn't really been out of position all that much.
He looks fantastic. Elijah looks great. Elliot Davidson, I think, has really been an anchor. He's really held down his responsibilities well. Ken Robinson, of course, all over the place, all over the field. But I've been really surprised with the depth at the unit. All of the guys
Mm-hmm.
seem to be good. There's not a weak link at the position. Very, very similar, I think, with yeah, I guess so. I guess altogether, UTSA secondary has been probably the most impressive of UTSA's position groups. When you look at the quarterbacks and the safeties together, I think they've probably surpassed expectations the most.
Yeah, I don't think that they've been the best unit. I definitely don't agree with that. I think the defensive line, the linebackers have been better, but relative to my expectations, yeah, and that's probably a fair take.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
gotcha.
Absolutely. Neither of them are a position grades, but
Mm-hmm.
relative to where we expected them to be, they've surpassed expectations the most, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the safety's better than the cornerbacks. I said the cornerbacks are probably in the C plus B minus range, but safeties are probably closer to B plus.
I'm going B plus for the safeties as well.
Yeah. A couple more INTs, they can get an A.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. They had some miscommunications that led to some easy scores, but they saw some explosive offensives too. Against Texas State, and UT. So I can allow that. I think B plus feels fair to them.
Mhm.
I think we hit all the positions.
It
What's
was.
overall defensive grade?
Defense has been good for me. I don't have too many qualms with the defense. They've improved a lot. Yeah, they got ran up on against Texas State. It was week 2. It happened fast. Offense didn't give them any help that week either.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels, even though they've given up nearly 32 points per game, it feels like a lot of that has been more so the defense not getting much help. And look, you
Yep.
got beat by 39 and 49 points against Texas State and Texas. So it's a little bit slanted, crooked, skewed, I think is the word I want. So defense for me overall, B. I think a solid B minus at the worst, but they're there in that range, 85 to
Yeah,
80.
I think I'll go with the B as well. I was originally going to go with the B plus, but then I thought about all the penalties and
A
how those
lot of
dumb
them.
penalties have extended drives and kept teams, on the move and kept the sticks moving. So I'm gonna settle at a B for them. But I've said before, but I think like just the play-by-play performance of this defense is really strong. It's just finding that consistency that'll really elevate them and make them one of the best units in this league.
The penalties were really bad against ECU for the defense with all the pass interference and all the face masks. That was
Yeah.
in particular. And some of those emotional penalties we see, right? And who was it that was jawing at the sideline with Sarkeesian
Oh, that
at
was
UT?
Dadrian.
Was it
Yeah.
Deadrian?
Yeah.
So yeah. Defense were getting a little feisty out there, making those mental mistakes that we need them to
Yeah.
sharpen up on a little bit. They got to show some of that leadership because I think they have a little bit more of it. So you need them. You need them to step it up. Defense for me, yeah, Jared. B, I think so. I think offense is C. So
Special teams.
there's a discrepancy there now. I think the offense is the weaker of these two phases of
Definitely.
football, Jared.
Which
Special
we
teams,
expected. We said that preseason.
yeah,
It's gonna be weird to have a UTSA Jeff Traylor team that's a better defense than an offense.
yeah.
That's played off. What about special teams though? It's kind of been an interesting year for them. We've seen Chase Allen miss uncharacteristically quite a few field goals that he typically would hit. I think the kickoff and kickoff coverage has been pretty strong. Punt return has been hit or miss, I guess. Chris Carpenter had one really bad game against Kansas State.
Correct.
I recall. And the punting has been mediocre at best with some really poor punts against Texas State, namely.
Yeah.
So it definitely hasn't been a great year for special teams.
Gosh, it's been more bad than good for special teams, because the stuff that matters is sort of what's been going wrong, but especially with the place kicking, man, and Chase Allen having such a rough start. Now 4 for 7, still under 60% on the year for his field goals. Really, really bad start. It seems to be improving since he's talked to the sports psychiatrist, sports psychologist there before last week, before ECU, or no, maybe it was before HCU, one of the two. And he seems to have improved, but I think whenever we look at how bad the mistakes have been, a couple mental lapses there on the punt returns, the placement on the punts from Hogan, the ball hasn't quite, I think, landed where UTSA has wanted to as often as they'd like. Yeah, probably a C for special teams for me overall.
I'm thinking a C as well. I do want to give a shout out to Tate Sandell, though. He's been really great. Under the radar great. But yes, he feels fine. Coaching grade?
Coaching's bad, Jared. I got to give...
Mistakes are not being fixed.
I shouldn't have bit my tongue. First thing that was going to come flying out of my mouth was D for coaching. A big old fat
man.
D. It's been bad.
Yeah.
It hasn't been good because we haven't seen the issues get fixed on a week-over-week basis. We're seeing the same problems. They're not getting better. This team doesn't look prepared to play football. They don't look locked in to play football. It starts up top. I don't think Jeff Traylor would give himself any better of a grade right now.
Yeah.
That staff is not coaching well. It's bad. It's really, really bad. And the lack of experience from the assistant coaches is really starting to show as a glaring issue.
Ironically, Kurt Traylor was catching a lot of flack in the early season for how bad the offensive line looked, but that's probably the most improved unit. And even as injuries have mounted for that unit, they continue to get better. Even playing some guys that, let's be honest, like you did not imagine a converted defensive lineman and a Central Catholic product that had like no other offers as being like your two guards down the stretch to open conference play in the fourth quarter last week, but they're doing a fine job. So ironically, that's one of the shining points from the coaching staff, which, that's definitely a surprise. But man, just especially on the offensive side, the guys just don't look ready. They don't look well disciplined. They don't look prepared. Like, I feel like they're running a scheme that they don't have the talent to run. That goes back to the tight ends. The tight ends have been really struggling. I guess it's got to be a D. I don't know. That feels like a little unfair because like half the coaching staff's the defense, and I've been pretty happy with the defense. But the offensive side of the ball has been so bad. I think it comes out to a D.
Yeah, the average is bad because you could. Yeah, but the defense has had a few mistakes here and there, right? I mean, they can't get off scot-free either. So
yeah, I think the other thing with like returning so much of your coaching staff is like they also have to take accountability for the roster, right? Like if you bring in a new coach and the guys aren't performing, it's like, well, he inherited those players. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But the fact that you've got like 8 tight ends on the roster and none of them have really done much of anything this year, like everyone shares the blame in that. Even though you have a new tight ends coach, he was like the direct. Well, what was his role? He's a recruiting assistant, right? So obviously had a huge say in bringing those guys in. They didn't get a lot of transfer receivers. They got a lot of transfer running backs that they didn't need. It's been the guys that have been on the roster already that are looking the best at running back position. Just a lot of weird choices. A lot of these transfers aren't panning out. Some of them have, right? I don't want to be totally negative on that, but yeah, overall, I think it's a D, man.
Tough.
But I'll say, dude, the coach's money is made in the second half of the season, right? Like that's where you really separate yourself. You see how the young players develop. We're seeing positive signs of that. So they go on a little run here. They get 7 wins or whatever. They get bowl eligibility. You're feeling good about the young players. That grade will rise pretty quickly, but they still have to own, I think, like the preparation aspect, the talent acquisition aspect, and all of that as well. I mean, in this day and age, you shouldn't just accept that it's a young team, right? Like that's just not how football works anymore, right? Like we've talked
You
about North
can't.
Texas. North Texas has like 80 new players or something like that, and they look worlds better than UTSA right now. So you can't just like hand wave your problems as a young, inexperienced team because like that's within your control. That's your choice, right? And they did bring in a lot of transfers. They brought in a lot of transfers. Not a lot of those guys are contributing to the level that was probably expected when they were brought in. I think we can leave
It's
it at
not
that.
looking
Not
good,
much else to
Jared.
say, right?
Not looking good for UTSA. We've got 2 weeks. We've got a bye week. We've got no football this Saturday for the Roadrunners. Do not expect a game preview from us this week. We are going to have a lot of fun on the Patreon bonus episode taking your calls. So please call the Patreon hotline, the Alamo Audible Patreon hotline at 210 660 8259. That's 210 660 8259. Alamo Audible's Patreon hotline. Tell us how you feel. Give us that hot
And
take.
if you don't feel comfortable like having your voice on the podcast, I totally understand that. If you text us at that number, we may read it off in our own voice too. Or well, maybe we'll do an
We can do
AI
that.
generated voice. You know, who knows?
Yeah, we can do that. We can receive text at that number as well. So very exciting stuff.
Yeah,
Thank you
absolutely.
for making it possible to our big money donors. That's Ben Tovar, the Bunch family, Zach Espericueta, and the San Antonio Podcast Network, Alejandro Benavides, Dan Nerdall, our host of Around the Bird Bath, Jacob Cavazos, board president for the UTSA Alumni Association, John Nally, Rick Cortez of Rowdy Road Grillers, Sumner McDaniel, UTSA King Bowser, Maddie, Home Field Apparel, UTSA Once Home Field is your discount code, folks, where you can save 15%. That's UTSA Once Home Field. You can also find sweet game day merch at our fan shop. That's alamoaudible.com/fan shop. alamoaudible.com. You can go to our fan shop for game day gear. And 2 extra episodes every single week for just $5 a month whenever you subscribe to our Patreon. Very, very excited for our Patreon bonus episode. Tune in this week. Call in. Leave us your hot take. Jared, bye week, sir. How are you going to be spending your wonderful Saturday sans UTSA football this week?
That's a great question. We have a Greek festival in Houston that I absolutely love. So Friday night, I'll be at the Greek
Oh,
festival. Yeah, if you're in Houston,
nice.
you're out there. You can give me a souvlaki if you'd like.
Oh,
But
yes,
Saturday, I don't really have
sir.
too many plans. There's a music festival going on. I might hit up. I don't know. We'll see. I'm trying to keep it low key.
Very cool. All
I was
right.
hoping
Very,
I could
very
go scout
cool.
Rice because I live right down the street from Rice, but they're on a bye week
Yeah.
as well. So
Wow. Look at that. Look at that. All lined up. All lined up. Fresh rest for Rice and UTSA in
mhm.
2 weeks. Whenever UTSA is in Bayou, which, by the way, we did get a kickoff time that is 6 p.m. on ESPN Plus. But you just be in Houston for the dang game. Watch it live.
Yeah,
6
yeah, we'll be
p.m.
out there.
here at Rice. Yeah, so come mess with us there for
Yeah.
sure.
What about you,
Uh,
Adrian? Do you have any bye week plans?
no, not too much, man. Really just sort of running around and kind of relaxing a little bit and being a good old family man, right? So I'm sure there's going to be a couple of things that we're going to be flying around to and
Mm-hmm.
enjoying.
Mm-hmm.
So
Nice stuff.
maybe I can convince a late night stop at the Greek festival on the, after whatever Saturday things we end up doing. Maybe I can pull a Greek festival move. That sounds like
I
a good
highly
time.
recommend, man. It's awesome.
Yeah, we would enjoy that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, stay
All right.
tuned for what should be an explosive episode on Patreon. That is 210-660-8259 to drop your hot take. And we'll see you guys over behind the curtain on Patreon later this week. Thank you guys all so much. Be sure to follow us on all social media platforms, and we'll see you back next week.